Right on, right on, right on. All right, so it's week two in our class, which hasn't started yet. And it's always a little weird when I record content before the start of the semester because which happens almost every time as the semester starts, students start asking questions. And generally, this is the kind of format where I will answer those questions. But because you're not here yet and I'm here and I've got the content ready to go, I can't do that. I can kind of anticipate, and that's what I'm going to attempt to do today. Questions that you may run into coming into this week to content. So just know that this may be the last week I release. Honestly, it depends on the students in this class coming into the spring 2022 semester. Because if you get to this point and you finish this week before the start of the semester, send me a message out, meaning post out on our Discord channel and say, hey, how about week three? Because I will probably by that point have looked at week three. And I think for you all, for week three, it is going to be day 3 and 4. 3 and 4. So we don't have a learn together for next week. So that's a little different. And I don't think I have anybody taking my JavaScript class and my Python class, which by the way, I don't recommend. If you happen to be somebody that kind of slipped through, because if I see students in both, I will generally say, not a great idea. Generally, especially if you're new to coding, take one coding class at a time. Even if you have experience, don't take more than one. But regardless of that, here's a couple things I want to say before I jump in and give you a little heads up and go over some of the work. Because this week you have day 2 for the Udemy course. I just finished rewriting the notes for day 2 because the content order-wise had changed a little bit, and I'm changing a little bit of the way that I'm having you create the files. So I'm going to go over that and just show you. The next item you have, which is a new item for this class, is kind of like your week 0, how did it go? But this is where I give you some kind of additional challenge like you're getting in the course, but we're learning together in this sense. And here's what I want to have you understand before I actually go over what that work is. So part of this class, an important part, actually 50% of this class, is you coming up with concepts that you write code to accomplish those specific concepts in that meets the requirements that I give you. So being able to come up with concepts and code to them is the thing that honestly most people take a coding class to learn. So I want you to know that what we're going to do to kind of help you step into this thinking is actually have you modify some of the code we've already written in the course. But I want you to contextualize this by understanding that modifying somebody else's code that they've given you, like, here's the code solution for this, let's say, final challenge for maybe day 1 or day 2, or any of the exercises, like, you have that code now, right? And what I'm going to have you do is take that and modify that, add something to that. But the reason I'm doing this is to start you thinking about this process of what could I, right? Based on the Python that I know, what could I add to this code that's already there? Doesn't have to be, I don't want to say it doesn't have to be a lot. It has to be thoughtful. It needs to be meaningful, right? Think about the outputs of like the tip calculator or the band creator, and think about how you could modify that or any of the exercises. But know that when we get to the development part of this class, that part is you coming up with concepts, coding it without somebody else as an example. I think it's good to be able to modify code. The goal for us in our dev work is for you to write code and then come into a code review, because that is real world examples, in my opinion, based on everyone I've talked to. I know a lot of people. I've worked in the industry myself, and that skill base is really what you want to walk away from this class with. But we're going to step you into that this week. Okay, all right, let's move over and let me look at this week's work. So, what I have here is the student view, like you saw me do in your week one attendance, right? And this week, now I've just published it. So, again, everything is sequential unless I note otherwise. Hopefully, by now, you've all gotten your local dev environments done. If not, you definitely need to be reaching out. So, here's the attendance, the video that you have for, this is the video, this is the reply, and it is due on, in this case, that's one of the things that's different is that we have a holiday on Monday. So normally, let me just click on the calendar to show you this. Normally well, we're in December, so you can see in the real world, I'm a little ahead of you. Well, behind, depending on when you find this. So in this case, during our second week, right, because Monday is a holiday, I always move items to the next day, right? Now, that doesn't, you can, of course, and I recommend working early. Working ahead is definitely a good idea. Working ahead will give you the ability to, if you run into challenges, fix them. If you submit them, as I've said before, and I see some issues with your code, then you can actually fix it. Okay. So running ahead is always great. All right, so now, so in addition to attendance, again, it's moved one day over. That doesn't change the Thursday night item, just to be clear. Okay, so let's go back to the course, right? Let's go back to, oh, that's right. Let's go back to the course itself, which is in here, because again, I'm looking at it from the student's perspective. All right, so we are in week 2. We're in here in attendance. Here's what I want to talk about. Day 2 and the first learn together. I already kind of set the tone, but now I want to actually be specific. Okay. In day 2, let's just reach over and look, right? Day 2 is a really talking about understanding data types and how to manipulate strings. You have several coding interactive coding exercises. I call them EX for exercises. You have a quiz here, another quiz here, and then the final project here. So as before, when we go look, right, so let me just hit a quick reply so you can, and by the way, I'll tell you in a minute what I want that reply to be. I'm going to do this just so I can move on. And then what that allows me to do, right, because this first item requires a reply. So here is the instruction for this day, right? So again, create your folder inside your 100 days, which is already created. Day 2, again, lowercase, no spaces, and then create a readme.md file. Now, this is the note of what I want to talk about is as I was doing this work, I thought, I want to give some flexibility for note taking because definitely in some of these earlier videos, you're watching and you're taking notes and you're coding along, right? So if you're at this point thinking I'd like to organize those notes in my README file, you can totally do that. But if you want to comment in your Python file, which we've already seen how to comment, that's totally fine as well. What I want you to do in this day 2 README file you've created, just tell me, like, which of these 2 approaches are you going to do? Are you going to take notes where I have in your instruction to take notes? Or are you going to use comments in your Python file? Okay. Now, there will be times you still need to update the README file. As an example, when you're taking quizzes, then I want you to post your score, which, by the way, just know I'm not grading you on your actual score. And part of this, you have to kind of think about the following, right? This is, and it's an honor system. And it's not that, and if you want to retake it, cool. And actually say that I retook it and I got a perfect score. Totally all right. Part of this is learning how to conform to the culture that I'm attempting to create. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to be clear about that. And then, and it shows you on each one what you need to do. And you don't actually have to do a commit, right? So we've been talking about like the Git workflow, right? So Git add, Git commit when you're ready to commit whatever code you've done, but you don't actually have to do a git push until you're all the way through. Because remember those three commands, right? So git add, if it's new files, it tracks them. If it's files you already had, it adds, it takes that code and gets it ready into the staging, and then you commit it. It commits it into your local repo. And then when you push it, it pushes it out to GitHub so you can submit it. So when you see me say, commit your code with message, right? Use the message I'm asking for. And on these, and this is really important, like when you're doing like on video 21, your first exercise for this day, right? I'm having you create an EX1 file and then you can copy the starting code. Remember, like, let's just go look real quick. Here is the exercise we're doing right here, 21. So when you go here and you look at the starting code, she will say fork, but no, from here on out, everyone should be working locally. And what you can do here is you can just say show files. And then what you can do is look at main. You can just copy that, okay, and then paste it into whatever file I'm having you create. Now, by the way, you do want to also look at the README files here because these are the detail of what your code needs to do. So you definitely want to understand that. I don't make you copy that, but you do want to understand that because maybe you were listening and it's like, oh, what does it mean? Or what's some example output? Because here's some, again, that idea of she gives you examples of what, if you give it this input, here's the output you would expect. Okay. So, and it's really important that you understand the challenge, right? Write your attempt to the coding challenge. And then once you have working code or you want to see the solution. Now, if I see that you're not attempting it, I will comment on that. And over time, what I would want you to know is it doesn't help you. If you don't give this part of the course its due and you just immediately run to the solutions. Now, in this very beginning, I'm not going to mark off, but over time, it will be something that you and I will have a conversation with because part of what you're doing is like reading, understanding, watching, and then doing. And if you miss the doing step or the making sure you comprehend step, when we get to the dev work, it will be much harder. So you can see, right, okay, so there's your comment, right? So there's your commit message here, code along. And then in this case, if we're not doing I can't for some reason say it, exercises or final project, I just have you code in the main.py, and then I do give you that option to either do comments or notes. And then I will tell you in this case, actually it should be math operators, not match operators. And always, by the way, I always appreciate anybody that gives me feedback on things I may have missed in here. Okay, so you'll go all the way to the end, right? On the last one, then you'll comment in your readme.md. Now, in this case, the reason I wouldn't have you do comments is we're actually not working in a file. This is just your comments from watching the last video. And then I say here, like I said last week, but this is just giving you more, right? To complete the Git workflow by pushing your files to GitHub and then going to GitHub and navigating to your private repo for 100 days, day 2, and then change the URL to show commits, right? And then copy that to put into Canvas. So I think it's just good maybe to show you again. So as an example here, I don't know if I've pushed actually my day 2. We'll actually find out right now. Now, in this case, I'm going to do private. I could just look through the list, but it's right there. Maybe I haven't pushed my code. Oh, I didn't, right? But it's the same idea. If you go to your day 2, this is your listing of files. You come to your history, you grab the URL, you copy it, and this is what you're going to submit for your assignment, right? Come down here, and there you go. Now, again, I did day 1, so just giving you the example. I do also show you what files should be in that folder. So I just want you to see, though, what you're committing is your URL that shows your commits, and that allows me to kind of go to the places that I review. in your code. So I'm going to go ahead and submit that. Okay, so now let's move along to our last item to talk about, which is your Learn Together. And this is the one I previewed before, right? So I give you a little context. If you're reading this and you got through your local dev and you got through day 1 and day 2, that's awesome. If so, congrats. And if not, right, the idea is by now you should have that local environment. Hopefully you're reaching out if you need it. All right, so here's what I want you to do is to complete this item. I want you to create a new folder in your, there's something I couldn't say it here. Actually, I can say it here as well because it's on my attendance notes as well. Actually, it's fine to cover it here. But so this work, sorry, side note for a little bit, create a new folder in your public repo and name it W3, right, for week 3, sorry, W2. And in that folder, create a new file called main.py. Yeah, so step 1 is review your code after you create that folder. Review day 1 and day 2 week work. And then, think of something that you can add to the exercises or the final projects for each day, right? So you have 2 days to choose from here, right? And then create that folder named W2, create that main file, main.py, and then copy whatever that working code is, right? And then commit. I want you to, once you just get that set up, then just commit that with starting setup complete, right? And then each student, and this is important for you to understand, needs to write their own unique code, right? And if you do the same modification as someone else, the first person that posts the modification will get the points for that work. So this is where it's important to read through, right? Because once you hit post here, right? And this is a little more challenging because replies aren't visible until or you won't see what other people have done. So what you could do is you could reserve. Now I haven't written the content here, but you could actually go ahead and say, hey, this is the one I'm going to do. That way everybody else knows it, right? But if you're waiting until the point of doing it and somebody else has already done that modification, then you have to choose something else. Okay. You can reach out if you have any questions about that. But again, you need to write your own code. It needs to be different. First person that does modification gets the points for that. So make sure you do review what's in there. You can reserve that as well. So also now in your week 2 folder, create a readme.md file. And in that file, write at least one good paragraph on something you think would be fun to create for our development work, kind of what I was talking about at the beginning of this video. Remember, the idea of this course is for you to learn Python, how to write Python, understand Python code, and then be able to create code on your own for a specific topic that you're interested in. Like one I'm very interested in is tracking my EV cost. I have electric vehicle, and tracking the cost of what that is adding to my PG&E is important to me, or just overall what the cost is. Okay, so once you're ready to submit, push your code to GitHub. Now, this submission, and by the way, I had you do one commit, so I should say, and I probably will modify this to add your second commit showing you finished and you're ready to go, right? And that you push that code out to GitHub. And then post, in this case, your URL to your W2, not your commits like you do in your code, your learn together, or sorry, your code along work, like every day in the Udemy. Those are committing your commit history. This is just your URL. So let me actually show you, since I think it's good to do. And in the process, I'll come back and talk about writing PEP8 code. So let me go for a minute here. Go down to the public. I'm going to create a new folder called W2. In there, right, I will create a main.py. Right? I will copy in the code from whichever one I'm going to modify. Really good to add comments here as well. You're going to add a readme.md file. And in there, you're going to write about, right, my dev work or something like that, right? Something that just has a good paragraph that talks about that. Okay, so let's actually now come down here. I'm going to open in my integrated terminal. I'm going to do git add star, git commit m. I'm going to say day, week to learn together, complete, right? So remember, this now is your second commit on this because I wanted you to commit as soon as you, now in this case, I actually did just the setup, but I think you get the idea, and then git push. The reason I'm showing you this is because this reply will have a different, let's go to here, a different way you're posting your work. That's why I'm actually showing you, okay? So I'm gonna go to week 2. So you're not going to history. You're just going to go grab the URL, okay? Because this will allow somebody else to just click on your URL and review your work, okay? So what you can do is just paste that. Nice thing here is that Canvas will generally, when you hit enter, just create the URL, so it's easy to do. Okay, and then write something, right? Write something here about any part of this. Actually, what you might want to write about here, actually, no, I'm going to make that a requirement, is this is where you're going to write about, about what you chose and what you modified, right? About what code from exercises or from the final project you selected and how you modified it, okay? And anything else you want to say about that. Okay, so to do this work, in addition to posting this and writing, you do have to reply to 2 students to get full points. Now, I'm going to do one thing different this semester, starting this semester, is students who post 2 days before the due date are not required to do replies, because what happens is they've posted early enough to give other people something to look at, and it's always good to work ahead. So if you post 2 days before, that means 48 hours before the due date, which in this case we could go look at when it's due, January 20th. So back that up, which basically would mean you had done it right after you did the day 2 code along. Okay, and then you can just hit reply there. Now again, this is just showing you the example. All right, so here's, I want to go back to our attendance because there was one thing I forgot to talk about that I want to talk about, which is in here, which I think is the last thing in my list, right? Yeah. And I mentioned this last week, so now it's like from this point forward, right, all your code needs to be PEP8 compliant. And what this means is when you submit work, I actually bring it into my local environment and I check it for PEP8. But at this point, you definitely need to be doing it. So let me just give you an example, because when you're copying code from Dr. Angela's Udemy course, like as an example, like here, this main.py, this is actually not PEP8 compliant. So, but it's very easy to make it PEP8. So let me just show you. Okay. So the first thing, let me just go back to my, and by the way, the other thing is when you have code that is not PEP8 compliant, you actually can tell because it is in this case red, the file itself. I believe that might be prettier. I'm not totally sure. You might see a little something different there, but you get the idea. And here's the other way you know, is you're down here. If you go down to your terminal, again, terminal, right, new terminal, when you're down here, this is where you can run Python code here. We've shown you how to run it as well, just through the ID, full ID, no, just your editor. And here's the problem. So in this case, there's 2 problems with this code. And the first one is block comment should start with the pound, but space. So pretty easy to get rid of that one. The second one is that if they have a line there and they just want there to be one new line. Okay. So once you do those 2, and you can just look at these, you can look them up, you can ask on Discord, what is that? But know that from this point forward, you have to be writing code that is PEP8 compliant. I just want you to get into, I mentioned this last week, but this is the week of my hard, I will take off points if you're submitting code. Like I take off points if you don't do the right commits, right? If you don't do all the work, if you don't write the comments or the notes correctly, right? I take off points for that. So, and now I also take off some points for PEP8. So just to be clear as well, you can just, if you didn't get this done, you go up to Command Palette to get your linter installed, right? You may have to actually, once you do this step, select and do I use Pi code style. There are other linters as well. Pilot, I think, is one. I've just had the most success with this one. So if you once you choose that, if you get a message, you might have to install something, reboot. But in that case, again, once you see errors down here, then you can just come down. Generally, you can read them, but again, if you want to reach out, I gave you last week an example to writing beautiful code and the PEP8 style guide. So understanding its basic requirements for what the kind of code we're writing should be pretty doable. But again, it is good to ask. Wow. I think I got it. I think I got it all done. All right, hang in there. Have a great week. Here's the thing. I've covered everything you need to do this week, so there's no other video from me. I will now start looking at next week's code to redo my instruction for 3 and 4. But again, if you get through all this work, send me a message, not me a message, post a message in our Discord and say, hey, how about week 3? Have a great one. Talk to you later.